2 years ago, my wife disappeared. Some bizarre events happened recently. Anna is the love of my life. The world freezes every time I kiss her, floating in time as if all the problems outside the radius of our intertwined bodies didn't exist. If there is a paradise, I wouldn't think it could be better than the time I spent with her. Even if I'm anxious or stressed, at the end of the day when I see her, everything is absorbed, and no problem can bring me down as long as she is by my side. Her presence is enough. My deepest dreams are fulfilled. As the universe seemingly circles in a way that dreams can never be achieved, it all changed that night. Anna disappeared after a day's work. Her car was found empty on the side of the road, with all her belongings still there. No signs of struggle or robbery. I notified the police immediately, who searched the forest in the small town where we lived. In vain. After the police gave up, I tried to find her on my own, walking daily in the forest, looking for any signs of what happened to her. My despair and sadness increased as my hope vanished. With all my efforts being futile, I gave up after a few months. My mental state crumbled. I got deeply depressed. During the day I worked. At night I drank alone at home. I no longer hanged out with my friends. I just sat in the living room looking at the door, fantasizing that one day it would open and Anna would be there, with her warm and contagious smile. 2 years later, the police having long since ceased the search, the impossible happened. The night was lost in the usual routine. Me on the couch, beer in hand, staring into space. Light knocks echoed through the house. Someone was at the door. I got startled. Everyone had already given up visiting me, tired of being ignored. After all, the attempts from my friends to cheer me up always worsened my mood. So after such failures, I isolated myself, always saying no, to leave my residence for something other than going to work. Due to all this, I imagined that I had dozed off and dreamed about the knocks. After a few seconds later, the knocking repeated, so I went to the door, unlocking it. Like my happiest dreams, there she was, hair shorter than the day she disappeared, but otherwise exactly the same. Anna, the love of my life.
"May I come in?"
the delicate voice asked. I froze, unable to decipher the situation, flooded with a mixture of surprise, apprehension, and euphoria.
"Marco, hey, are you really going to ignore me?"
I came back to my senses and answered her. "Sorry, of course you can come in. The house is yours too." She sat on the sofa, a discreet smile populating her face, alternating glances at me and the floor, as if she was embarrassed to stare for too long. I looked perplexed at the ghost in front of me, containing my hopes a little, even with the concrete figure of my dreams breathing the same air as me. I unintentionally came across as a little rude next.
"Where were you?" "Always straight to the point, huh? Can't complain. This is one of the things that made me fall in love with you."
She paused for a few seconds and stared at the floor, in a gesture of concentration to remember what had happened.
"Well, I was returning from work when I saw a person standing in the middle of the forest. I slowed the car down and rolled down the window. The man was screaming for help, looking desperate. I stopped the car and went to him. Then I don't remember anything else. Today, I woke up in the same place where I lost my consciousness, and I walked here. I don't know how much time has passed, but by your beard it must have been at least a month."
I sat by her side, holding those two delicate hands, which disappeared in mine, and faced her with a serious expression.
"Anna, I know this is not easy to hear, but you disappeared for 2 years.
She remained silent, seeming to understand. I didn't say anything else. Maybe she erased what had happened in the last 2 years because of the trauma. She was probably kidnapped and gone through a lot. If she's ready someday, she knows she can trust me to talk about everything. I took the whole week off work and rekindled the lost happiness. It was like she'd never left, interacting as we've always done for the past 14 years, with that connection written in the stars since our teens. On Friday, I called some friends over to my house. I couldn't wait to share the good news. Strangely, though, when they arrived, she was gone. I searched the entire house. No sign of Anna. After a few beers, my friends left. A few minutes later, Anna appeared in front of me with an angry expression.
"Why didn't you tell me you would invite people? I wanted to surprise you. They miss you too. I don't like surprises. Talk to me next time."
She went to the bedroom and slammed the door. I slept on the couch that night. In the following week, I went back to work. On the way home, with a new curiosity rooted in my brain, I started to observe the forest while driving. The answer to what happened to Anna was in the middle of the green immensity. One day, looking to the trees as I drove slowly, I saw a man staring at the road. I pulled over and rolled down the car window.
"Hello? Are you lost?"
The man immediately turned away from me and ran into the middle of the forest. As soon as I got home, I described the anomalous scenario to Anna. After all, there was no house near that inhospitable region, and there is nothing to do there.
"Honey, in the same place where you disappeared, I saw a person standing still. It could be the kidnapper or some accomplice of his. We should tell the police." "No."
She seemed bothered for the second time since she had returned.
"Don't go into the forest. The important thing is that I came back. There's no need to dig up the past. Promise me you'll never go in there. It's dangerous." "But—"
I couldn't argue. Anna left me talking to myself. Obviously, I found her speech strange. Could it be that she remembered something? I didn't comfort her, but every time I saw her, I contained myself from asking what were the dangers in the forest that she wanted to warn me about. After the initial happiness of Anna's return, I noticed some unusual behaviors. She never left the house, nor interacted with anyone other than me, not even on social media. One day, as we were cooking dinner, she put her hand into the fire and only took it off after I pulled her arm. She then stared at the burnt skin, emotionless expression, as if she didn't feel pain, but was amused by how she could see her own flesh. She snapped out of it after I broke the silence.
"Are you okay, honey?" "Oh, right, ouch. This hurts really bad."
Anna made a "that hurts" expression and then smiled, as if she was acting.
"I'll take you to the hospital." "No, I'm fine. I just need some ice."
For my surprise, she really was fine. There was no signs of burnt skin on the next morning. She healed insanely fast. Another strange factor is that I have the impression that she doesn't sleep. She just lies next to me and stays still. Before the disappearance, she always snored. Now, even after weeks, I've never heard her snore. On one of the nights, when I woke up suddenly, she had her eyes open, staring at me. She closed her eyes immediately, pretending she was asleep. I needed answers. I dusted off a revolver that was in my possession, an inheritance from my late father. I started taking it to work, leaving it in the car, hoping that on the way home I would see that strange man in the middle of the forest again, and I could confront him a little more safely, armed with the lethal tool. After a few weeks of driving slowly and observing the forest, there he was again, that strange man standing in the middle of the forest. I stopped the car immediately and walked towards the figure, cautious steps. "Hello? Are you okay?" I shouted as I approached, the revolver hidden in my back. The sighting became clearer as the distance shortened. He was a tall, middle-aged man with shaved hair. The peculiarity was in his expression. Despair and extreme sadness inhibited that static, unblinking face. I stopped a few meters from him. He did not move, nor did he respond to my interactions and attempts at dialogue. I punched his arm and screamed at his ear. Not a muscle trembled. Suddenly, he ran off into the trees. I went after him. It wasn't easy to chase him in the dense forest, but with my hunger for answers, I got up immediately whenever I tripped over logs and stones, and ignored the tears in my skin caused by the tangles in branches. After a long journey, the man crossed some dense bushes, seeming to go underground. I stopped for a moment, my lungs complaining from straining beyond their usual capacity. After recovering, I continued to follow him, crossing the dense bush and discovering a cave. The beginning was rough and torturous, as expected in such an environment. After walking a few dozen meters, I came across a dead end. The man I was following couldn't have vanished into thin air, so I surveyed my surroundings, illuminating my cell phone. Underneath a rock, there was a button. I pressed it, and an opening in the wall occurred, revealing a laboratory. The mostly white environment contained various research paraphernalia around it, and it was incredibly spacious considering the location. On one of the labels, an image gave me chills. With his chest open, a deformed man lay there, his organs in containers on the table beside him. I flinched as I heard an angry voice echoing from behind one of the doors.
"I give up. This fucker runs aimlessly out of nowhere. As soon as I finish analyzing this one, I'll cut open the son of a bitch. There's no hope for him."
I hid behind one of the counters when I noticed him approaching. It was a man in a lab coat, hair already white. I got up and pointed the gun at him.
"Who's the person on the table?"
He raised his hands in a sign of complicity.
"I didn't murder anyone, if that's what you're thinking. This specimen was created in the laboratory. It died after a few days. There was a malformation of the brain. I'm just studying the errors in its creation."
I shook my head, still trying to digest what he had said. My conclusion was that it didn't matter if that was true or not. I wouldn't trust that man. Something very wrong was happening, and it was probably related to Anna's disappearance and her coming back, all weird. I pointed the gun at the door he emerged from.
"That door. Open it."
"Sir, this is a private laboratory. You are trespassing. I will ask you to leave."
"Open this fucking door! I'm running out of patience."
He unlocked the door. Behind it, 3 cells. In one of them, the man I had followed was staring at the wall, not moving, and sitting on the bed. A man identical to him in the other cell. I shivered with what I saw, almost dropping the gun with the ease that ran through my body. She was there, her hair completely shaved, otherwise identical to the day she disappeared. The love of my life, Anna. She melted into tears as soon as she saw me. I ordered the scientist to open the cell and hugged her. Confusion and happiness conflicting in my brain. Anna told me she had been trapped there the whole time. And despite the fact that they had drugged her a few times and performed experiments, that she had no idea of what they did because she was anesthetized, she had been treated well during the period. The scientist, upon seeing the scene, interacted with me.
The clone, she's with you, isn't she?
Clone?
She's my masterpiece. The next human evolution. I created something better than divine creation. You need to give her back. We can pay you millions in compensation.
I'm not giving anything back. She's not yours.
She was born here. I raised her. Let me call my boss. You can take your wife, but return the specimen. You will get rich.
No.
What do you think the creature that is living with you will do when the original one returns? She will kill your Anna to try to steal her life. Or maybe even kill you both. It's very dangerous to keep her with you. Bring her back. She was born in this laboratory and is alive for less than a year. It's an unstable and dangerous creation.
I thought for a while. Besides all the strangeness, the woman at my house definitely had the same memories of my wife. She could remember things about the day we met, or the day we got married. Upon observing my expression, the scientist added,
Either you return her with an agreement beneficial to both of us, or my boss gets her back by force. You choose.
The woman in my house might not be the Anna I married, but she was still her. If I gave her back, she would serve as a guinea pig for the rest of her life, not to mention that the bastard in front of me had kidnapped my wife. Rage dominated my whole body, as I remembered the 2 years of me staring at the door, and the thought about the dozens of scenarios of Anna being tortured and experimented. I pulled the trigger. The bullet went through the scientist's forehead, creating a smear of blood and pieces of brain on the wall. I pointed the gun at the man sitting in the other cell along with the clone, who was still standing facing the wall, not moving a muscle.
They kidnapped me too. Let me go, please.
If I let you live, they will know. They'll come after me.
I'll hide. No one will know about me.
I thought for a while. Even if the man hid, he could still be captured and tell about me. I looked at Anna and made the decision based on her expression, as my rage disappeared staring at those brown eyes. I couldn't kill that innocent man. What was I thinking? So I released him, who asked me to lend him the gun. I declined, obviously. He walked into the lab, came back with a scalpel, and stabbed his clone, who didn't flinch or blink as he was struck, as if he didn't feel pain or emotions.
I'm doing him a favor. Believe me, this is mercy.
I looked at Anna, apprehensive about what he had done, but she reaffirmed that the man was trustworthy. She must know. After all, they must have been each other's only company during those 2 years. Upon getting home, Anna's clone looked at my wife with terror on her face, probably thinking that I had made some kind of deal with the scientist. I calmed her, but the awkwardness was only lessened after a lot of conversation. I found out about how Anna's clone had escaped. The scientist took his creations outside, studying how they interacted in an outdoor environment. The clone I followed must have run away in one of those tests. The second Anna is living with us as if she were a sister of the family. despite the fact I know that she has all the memories of Anna, and, well, that time I was alone with her, thinking that she was my wife. It was strange that both were being called Anna.
Call me Diana. I think it's a nice inside joke, plus it's a name I like.
This all happened last month. It's been hard to sleep. I'm afraid and anxious. I expect that, at any moment, some billionaire's henchman or some government task force will show up at my house and kill everyone. So far, I guess I got lucky. No one came looking for her yet. I fear that maybe I doomed myself. I don't think I'll go to the police either. I think it would only make everything worse. Anger whoever was the owner of that lab. Now I understand why the scientists called the clone a masterpiece. She needs no sleep and eats a lot less than a normal human. These last few days, Diana is wandering around the house a lot. Some days she goes to the yard and stares at us through the window. When I confronted her, she said that she was bored and wondering how normal humans sleep, finding it funny how we lose 1/3 of our day just lying there, defenseless. Diana is staring at me as I'm writing this, smiling in a robotic way, as if she knows that I'm telling our story. I asked her if she wants me to put something else for us to watch on the TV, as we are all sitting on the couch. But she said that she's fine, that she just likes to look at me. I hope that I made the right choices. I put a camera up and caught what was haunting me. So I recently moved into a new house in a pretty nice cul-de-sac. It's surrounded by carbon copy houses, and this one was in the same price range as the others. So I didn't expect anything out of the ordinary. It's only a 2-bedroom place with a full bathroom, a 1-car garage, and a spacious living room. I live alone, so I've turned one of the bedrooms into an office space so that I can work from home. Now I've gotten moved in. My bedroom looks nice, and I've even had friends over. So when the haunting started, I had already gotten comfortable with the space. At first it was small things. Maybe the TV would already be on when I got up to make breakfast. Or one of my dining room chairs was pulled back away from the table. One morning I even came out to see that my shelf of figures were all turned so that they faced my bedroom door. But soon enough, it got worse. Whatever was messing with me began to do so in my waking hours. I'd turn away from the bathroom only for the door to close and the light to come on. Or I'd be watching TV and my fridge would swing open whenever my eyes weren't on it. These always happened whenever I wasn't looking. Well, recently I decided I had had enough. I was tired of living in fear of whatever was living in my house with me. So I decided to set up a camera in the living room, and I posted what I saw here. Reviewing the footage, it was like this black figure created some sort of void and stepped out. It'd do mundane things like sit on my couch and watch TV, or admire my trinkets that I have on my shelf. Sometimes it'd go off from where I could see it, and it'd come back with a plate full of food. At one point I noticed it headed in the direction of my bedroom. I hadn't noticed anything weird when I slept that night, so I decided to hatch a plan. I decided that I'd take something to keep me up, pretend to sleep, then catch the entity in the act to see whatever he was doing. I put my plan into action the next day and laid comfortably in my bed, eyes closed, and waited. Soon enough, I heard noises coming from the rest of the house. It must have started its nightly ritual. I waited an hour, then another, until finally my bedroom door creaked open. I didn't dare open my eyes as I heard its footsteps approaching until they stopped right next to my bed. It sniffed, and it sounded like a dog's sniff but garbled. It then put its icy damp hand on my forehead.
Please sleep. I want dessert,
it said, but not physically. It was as if it was speaking through my thoughts. At that point I freaked out and opened my eyes. All I could see was the glow of its piercing white eyes, and I noticed that it had no mouth, or at least I didn't think it did. As soon as I caught a small glimpse of it, I ran out of my room, its long arms flapping back and forth, low to the ground like how an ape would run if it was only using its hind legs. But this wasn't an ape. It was a long, slender man made of shadows. I've been monitoring my situation the past few days after the incident, and the entity seemed more scared of me than I was scared of him. I decided to leave him a note asking that he put things back the way it was before it messed with them, and for the most part it seemed like it's been working. The camera is still catching it in the act, but it seems to have listened to my note. I talked to dead people. They told me the truth about sleep paralysis. I've always heard the voices. Most of the time they're soft and gentle, and I don't mind them being there. I admit, I enjoy their company. At first they seemed like random echoes and cries, but as I got older, I realized they are not random in the slightest. I'm talking to dead humans. They talk about everything, but it seems as though there are things they can't talk about. I've made a list of a few general rules, but that is a story for another day. I laid in bed. I don't normally have much trouble getting to sleep now. I used to. The voices were just too loud. But now I've gotten used to them, and over time I've convinced them to settle down when I sleep. I can still hear them when I'm asleep, just not as distinctly. Tonight was different. When I did finally get to sleep, the voices weren't jumbled and random. I heard every word with great detail. They spoke of the sea. I saw myself standing on a beach in a dream. They spoke of mountains. The image changed to a valley landscape, green and lively. Lastly, they spoke of the wind. I was high above the cold night clouds, feeling fresh, wet wind on my face. Then they spoke of nothing. They were silent. The wind stopped and the image faded to darkness. It was like I was watching a broken projector. A new image formed from static. My bedroom ceiling. I saw the room form from the top down. Am I awake? I reached for my phone. Nothing moved. It was as if I didn't have arms. Startled, I tried to sit up. Nothing moved. I tried to speak. My mouth didn't open. I began to panic. I fought the force holding me down, but there was nothing to fight. My head was spinning. My body seemed to move with it. It felt like my weight was shifting in circles. Wake up. He should stay still. It will pass. Again, they fell silent. My bedroom door opened. Don't look him in the eyes, Joey. He will leave. Hearing it for the first time made me realize that. Into the room came a giant being. As he progressed through the room, he unfolded. His upper body covered most of the ceiling. His arms bent backwards at the elbows and dragged on the floor behind him. I closed my eyes. I tried to scream. Silence. The voices were still quiet. As crazy as it sounds, I believe they were hiding from it. I heard a loud animal noise, like an elk, but it wasn't in my ears. It was in my head.
"Keep it out! Don't let it in!"
They were panicking too. It had found them. It had yet to approach me. I opened my eyes. It was observing me as if it looked straight into my soul. I believe it did. In my head I heard banging, like a door being forced closed while something tried to open it. It was breaking into my head and the people were keeping it out. It let out another cry. This one was much louder. It was wounded. I opened my eyes again and saw it fumbling around my room. It was in complete agony. It made its way out of my room. It was free of my head. I snapped back into reality. I reached for my phone again, this time successfully. I used its light to look around the room. My breath and heartbeat were panicked and irregular. The door was closed. Everything was normal. I asked them in my mind about what had happened. They spoke amongst themselves, arguing. Finally, the voice of a man spoke out. "Your mind is powerful. It is why we're here. They want to infect it. We must protect it, or we have failed our job here. Ask no more. I've said too much. I asked no more." The Cat Lady. Maud Jocelyn was West Knob's local cat lady. She had dozens of cats in all shapes and sizes, from kittens to old blind grimalkins. More numerous than the cats she owned were all the rumours about her amongst the locals. She was gaunt and frail. Her hair hung like gossamer webs from her scalp. Her skin was almost blue-grey, and all but 3 or 4 teeth were missing from her mouth. Her unfortunate appearance caused young school-children to shun her completely, avoiding ever walking by her dilapidated house, for fear she was a witch. But Thomas Eckel was no child, and he didn't believe in witches. He was almost 20 years old, short, stocky, and had 1 brown eye and 1 blue, which was his most distinguishing feature. Tom, as he was called by most, hated the pathetic, go-nowhere in town which he lived, and he wanted out. He had heard for years that crazy old cat lady was sitting on a fortune in that run-down litter box she called home. Sam wanted out of West Knob, and if the rumours were true, Maud Jocelyn was his ticket to do so. It was late, and the silver moon hung in the sky like a Cheshire smile. Many hours had passed since most of the town residents had retired to bed. But not Tom. He crept stealthily through Maud's backyard and up to her porch. The acrid stench of cat urine hung heavy in the air. It burned his nostrils and made his lip curl involuntarily. A wiry grey cat bounded from the porch as he stepped up onto the decaying boards, and Tom quietly cursed the creature for startling him. Another cat, a big orange one, drew its ears back and hissed at him as he reached for the door, which he found, not to his surprise, unlocked. When he opened the door, 3 more cats darted out in a mad rush. He was nearly knocked over by the malodorous assault. If the smell had been bad outside, it was doubly so inside. Tom covered his mouth and nose with one hand and took a small flashlight from his pocket with the other, shining the light about the kitchen. He was unnerved by the multitude of glowing eyes from the cats that watched him. He carefully stepped through the house, mindful not to step on one of the many animals about his feet. In the living room, he found nothing but litter boxes and decades-old furniture that had been shredded to tatters, covered in clumps of hair and stained with catsick. He made his way into what appeared to be a room used as a study. Near the window was a roll-top desk covered in a multitude of very old-looking books. Next to it on the floor was a large, antique steamer trunk. He was surprised to find this room occupied by only one cat, an ugly, scrawny black cat which perched itself atop the trunk. Its brightly glowing eyes were fixed on Tom as he crept further into the room. His light swept across the desk, but he saw nothing of value on it. He searched the drawers but found little more than stationery, pencils, and candles. Then he turned his attention to the trunk. The black cat sat atop it, unmoving, watching him curiously. Tom swatted at the creature with the back of his hand, and it casually jumped to the floor. But it did not leave the room. It only meandered to one nearby corner and continued to watch him. The trunk was locked. He snapped open the clasps that held it shut. Lifting the lid, Tom found, to his disappointment, only more books. One particularly large tome caught his attention, though. It was leather-bound and decorated in gold and silver filigree. He placed his flashlight in his mouth and lifted the heavy book from the trunk with both hands. The title of the book read, Baleful Polymorph and Transmogrification. Before Tom could process this, he heard from the corner of the room, where the cat had been, what sounded like the crackling of a fire, and the stench of cat urine was all at once replaced by what reminded him of the smell of lit firecrackers. He fell backwards in shock when he saw Maud Jocelyn standing in that corner. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. Thomas Eccles' sudden disappearance was the matter of some speculation around the village of Westnob. Some said he just abandoned the town he always hated, leaving behind all his possessions. But no definite answers were agreed upon. And who would have ever noticed amongst all of her many dozens of cats, her newest addition, a stocky little tomcat, with 2 different colored eyes?